The Unsolved Homicide of Karen Woodcock. Welcome back to Ontario Cold Cases, Canada's True Crime Podcast. I'm your host, Jay Nicoll from Nicoll Investigations. Today, we're going to revisit a case that has haunted the community of Peterborough for over 5 decades. A murder so perplexing that it continues to baffle seasoned investigators. It's a case with more questions than answers. A victim who was trying to turn her life around, and a killer who has evaded justice for far too long. We're talking about the unsolved murder of Karen Ann Woodcock, a crime that shattered a family on a quiet summer morning in 1973. Karen Woodcock was a 33-year-old mother of 7, living with her family in Peterborough, Ontario, in the summer of 1973. Her husband, Floyd Woodcock, was a welder at the local outboard marine company. By all accounts, both Karen and Floyd were heavy drinkers, and Karen in particular was known to have bouts of drinking that could last for days at a time. This lifestyle, unfortunately, placed her in vulnerable situations and often separated her from her family for short periods. But in the days leading up to her death, there was a glimmer of hope, a shining moment of personal triumph. Karen had just completed a commercial stenographic course at Sanford Fleming Community College, an accomplishment that was not only personally significant, but also a crucial step towards building a better, more stable future for her 7 children. This was a hard-earned achievement for a woman who faced significant personal struggles. It speaks volumes about her desire for change. She graduated just 2 days before her life was tragically cut short. A brutal contrast between her drive for self-improvement and the dark circumstances that ultimately led to her death. This is a key part of her story, a story that shows us a person with complexities, not just a tragic statistic and a cold case file. Let's go back and retrace her final days in detail. The timeline. The timeline of Karen's final days is crucial. It's a fragmented puzzle of social interactions, bars, and transient movements that has been meticulously pieced together by investigators over the years. It all started on Friday, June 29th, 1973. Following her graduation, Karen and her husband Floyd began drinking with a man named Daniel Robert Smith at the McGillis Hotel. Around 6:30 p.m., the 3 of them left to continue drinking at Smith's home. At 8:30 p.m., Floyd left, but Karen stayed behind. She and Smith then went out to several other bars, including the King George Hotel and the Queen's Hotel. While at the Queen's Hotel, Smith momentarily left Karen alone to speak with friends. And when he returned, she had vanished, disappearing into the city's nightlife. She then contacted another friend, Daniel Johnson, and spent Saturday night, June 30th, at his place. The 2 of them drank throughout the entire day and evening, a pattern that unfortunately made her a familiar face in the city's late-night establishments. Karen's last known movements began the early morning hours of Sunday, July 1st, a holiday weekend. At approximately 1:30 a.m., she arrived at her father, Edwin Mitchell's home. While there, she made a phone call and left shortly after, sometime before 2:00 a.m. Who did she call? What did they talk about? To this day, that remains an open and critical mystery. A call that could hold the key to who she met and where she was heading. The last confirmed sighting of Karen Ann Woodcock alive was around 4:20 a.m. that same morning. A witness, Harold Morton, saw her hitchhiking on the south side of the Park Hill Road intersection in Peterborough, trying to catch a ride in the pre-dawn hours. Other accounts corroborate this, placing her last sighting around 4:30 a.m. in the immediate area of Park Hill Road and Reed Street. Just a few hours later, the puzzle would take a dark and brutal turn. At 7:20 a.m. on Sunday, July 1st, 1973, Fred Simmons made a horrific discovery. He found Karen Woodcock's nude body on the side of the road along a stretch of Villiers Line in Otonabee Township, just outside of Peterborough. This location was not isolated, but a quiet rural road, and the discovery was made only about 3 hours after she was last seen alive. The autopsy confirmed the brutal nature of the crime. Karen had suffered repeated blows to the head, and a fractured skull was listed as the cause of death. But the crime scene held some truly baffling details that have complicated the investigation for decades. First, there was a shocking and critical lack of evidence at the discovery site. There was no blood on or around the body. This immediately told investigators that the Villiers Line was not the primary crime scene. Karen was not murdered there. Her body was moved to that location, likely dumped there under the cover of darkness. The true scene of the crime and any potential forensic evidence it holds is still out there, undiscovered. Second, there were no defensive wounds in her body. This could mean one of two things. Either she was taken by complete surprise and incapacitated quickly, or she knew her attacker and her guard was down, making her an easy target. The lack of a struggle suggests a level of familiarity or a swift, unexpected attack. Third, despite her body being found nude, there were no signs of sexual assault. This defies what we might typically expect from a crime of this nature, and suggests that nudity may have been an intentional act by the killer, perhaps a deliberate attempt to mislead investigators or to dehumanize the victim in her final moments. And finally, while her black dress, clunky black or blue shoes were missing and have never been recovered, her purse, containing $32, was still with her. It's a powerful piece of evidence, as it strongly indicates that robbery was not the motive. The combination of these factors, the secondary crime scene, no defensive wounds, no signs of sexual assault, and no robbery, points to a crime that was not random. It was personal, controlled, and deeply malicious. This complexity created immense challenges for the initial investigation, which began in an era without the advanced forensic tools we have today, like DNA profiling. Up next, the investigation. The investigation. In the initial days of the investigation, it's a standard procedure to look at those closest to the victim. For Karen, that meant her husband, Floyd Woodcock, was initially considered the prime suspect. However, based on the testimony of their children, who said their father was home sleeping at the time, Floyd was eventually cleared. It shifted the focus of the investigation away from the family unit and into the wider, more complex timeline of Karen's final hours, a path that has unfortunately gone cold. Today, the Ontario Provincial Police still classified Karen Woodcock's murder as an active cold case. It is under the direction of Detective Inspector Rob Hagerman of the OPP Criminal Investigation Branch, and the investigators assigned to this case have not given up on finding justice for Karen. In 2013, just before the 40th anniversary of her death, the OPP offered a $50,000 reward for any information leading to an arrest and conviction. That reward is still active today, and it remains a substantial incentive for someone with information to finally come forward and end the silence. Perhaps you were a child in Peterborough in 1973 and heard whispers. Maybe a parent or an older relative said something that didn't make sense then, but does now. Or perhaps you've gained knowledge of this crime over the years, a piece of information that's weighed on your conscience. The OPP wants to hear from you. If you have any information, no matter how small or insignificant you think it is, please contact Detective Constable Tracy Katz at the Peterborough County OPP 705-742-0401. You can also reach the general OPP line at 1-888-310-1122. If you wish to remain anonymous, you can call Crime Stoppers at 1-800-222-8477. Karen M. Woodcock was a mother, a wife, and a recent graduate with aspirations for a new life. She deserves justice. Her 7 children, who have lived for more than 5 decades without answers, deserve closure. Let's keep Karen's story alive, because in cases like these, the silence is often the killer's best friend. This has been Ontario Cold Cases, Canada's True Crime Podcast. Thank you for listening, because every case deserves answers, and every victim deserves justice. Subscribe now to Ontario Cold Cases, Canada's True Crime Podcast. Episodes available wherever you get your podcasts.